Alright, so for those of you who might have seen my upload from yesterday, when I made my update video the other week, I did not know I was going to be a part of the BBR. So yeah, surprise, I guess. I mean, you guys are now getting 2 draft leagues instead of 1. So I guess that's a plus. More videos, right? Like, yeah, you booing, shush. So yeah, we have another draft analysis for today. Back-to-back uploads. Don't get used to that. So for today's video, as you can tell from the title, this is my draft analysis for GDL Season 2, the league that I am a co-commissioner of. For Season 1, my co-commissioner was Olivia, but this time around, she kind of took a step back from doing draft league stuff. So we have a new co-commissioner in OG Albina, Ogle, Bina, Diabetes, whatever you guys want to refer to him as. So his channel link and stuff will be down below, as well as a link to our expanded roster. Season 1, I think, was only 12 coaches. This time around, though, we went up to 16 coaches, and the great thing about it is that we have a bunch more awesome people you guys can check out, so we can grow the league. And this time around, Season 2 will be more strictly ran. We're going to be more on top of things because we are able to use Automatics website, the draft league website, which is really amazing. Takes a lot of stress and a lot of issues off of the actual commissioners and stuff, which is me and Ogle again. So that in itself is very, very huge. So yeah, check out our roster, check out all the draft analysis going up today. Follow our Twitter. We are going to try to be more active on that as well and more interactive, so please give that a follow. So yeah, boss YouTube, aka what's up YouTube, if you're excited for us to be part of a second league, then make sure to hammer arm that thumbs up button down below. And because the Durham Dragons are the returning champions for Season 2 here, I was able to get my choice of where I wanted to draft, and obviously I had to pick number 1, but I guess I didn't really fully take advantage of my number 1 pick, because with the DLC out now, we're allowing things like Urshifu, G-Max Urshifu, and Zarud. So yeah, for Season 2 here, instead of Tier 5 Dynamax captains, we are allowing G-Max captains holding a Pokeball. So any G-Max has to 100% hold a Pokeball. It can't have no item. It can't hold any other item besides just whatever Pokeball. So I had my option of getting whatever mon I wanted to get, and I think the smarter choice might have been to get Urshifu or G-Max Urshifu. Even Zaruda might have not been that bad, but I didn't do that. I instead got Mew because, to be fair, Mew is kind of borderline broken. Like, you see all these moves. It would take me like at least a minute or two to just slowly go through all the moves. But yeah, Mew learns everything and anything just about. It's basically broken, and my thought process was, well, yeah, Urshifu is cool. G-Max Urshifu is cool, Zaruda is cool, but if I get Mew plus a G-Max captain, which, I mean, to be fair, G-Max captains alone already means you have a broken mon in general, then I have essentially 2 broken mons, and that is going to be also really solid. Although I guess if I cared about views and clickbait and all that, I could have got Urshifu or Sarud. It's really not that big of an issue to me. I want to use fun mons. I've never got to use Mew. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever get to use Urshifu because it could potentially be banned in future leagues, because I guess it is kind of borderline broken because of its signature moves, but that's neither here nor there because I got Mew and not those 2. So moving on. So yeah, Mew learns anything and everything. The only issue with Mew is that you don't really want to pigeonhole it into it being one specific role. For example, you don't want it to be your hazard removal, your physically defensive check to offensive mons. You don't want it to just be there for removal or hazard setup or anything like that. So that's the only real downside of drafting around Mew, is that you essentially need to draft like Mew isn't even there. You need to fill all the normal roles besides like a psychic type, I guess, which, I mean, you should get a fairy type anyways, or a ghost type to deal with fighting types, so then that way Mew doesn't need to be defensive all the time. So moving on to our second round pick here, obviously because I was number 1, I had to wait for 15 more picks for round 1 and then 15 picks for round 2 until it got back to me, and I had my eye on a few things, and I ultimately decided to go with CINDERACE. Now, CINDERACE is typically a Tier 1 Pokemon, but for the GDL here, we decided that we should actually try and see how it is for tier 2, because to be fair, it's not really a top tier 1 Pokemon. It's kind of on the lower end of a good tier 1 Mon. So we figured that, hey, let's see how it does in tier 2. And I figured, well, with this being in tier 2 and me having my eye on it already, and there realistically not being another solid tier 1 that I really wanted right now, I figured that I can go ahead and pick this up now, since it is realistically the best Pokemon on the board that could fit with what I potentially want my plan to be, which I didn't really plan it out entirely too much, but there were still kind of some ideas here and there that I wanted to get. And the nice thing about Cinderace is that with Core Change, this gives me a really good form of hazard control. This is definitely something that's going to force my opponents to second guess whether or not they want to bring hazards against me, because I can just go ahead and flip those hazards back onto them, and that in itself would be amazing. It gets U-turn, it gets bulk up, has a really good speed tier, best 119. Also, I forgot to mention this, but we are going to be doing a nickname theme of Naruto for this draft. Naruto is probably one of my all-time favorite animes. I'm not super into anime like that, but I love Naruto Shippuden. Haven't watched Boruto because I've heard so many bad things about it, so I don't really care about that. But yeah, we're going to be going with the Naruto theme. So this is going to be shiny Cinderace called Kaguya, and then Mew is going to be Naruto because there was nothing else that I thought I could name Naruto. I was going to name it Hashirama. Shout out to my boy General Tar Heel and Galvane for helping me with the nicknames for my Mons here. But I figured Naruto, I mean, Mew's the main leader of the team. Naruto is the Hokage currently. And, well, spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen Naruto. Yeah, I'm not really thinking. So, yeah, Mew's awesome. Mew's Naruto. Kaguya, Cinderace. So, yeah, two awesome Mons. Really good start here to the draft. And because this was my first wheel, I had already set in my mind that I'm going to go ahead and get my G-Max round 3, because I don't want to pass up on this G-Max because there's a good chance it might not come back to me again. I got to go through 30 picks before I pick again, and that's a lot of picks, honestly, and G-Maxes are really, really awesome. So I knew that I didn't want a tier 1 G-Max unless it was Mega Gengar. I remember debating for so long whether or not I wanted G-Max Gengar or the G-Max that I did decide, which is G-Max COPPERAJAH, aka Choji. I think that nickname is self-explanatory because it is a G-Max Mon. So yeah, originally again did want Gengar or this, and I guess ultimately I decided to go with this because even though yes, having a G-Max Mon that is very fast and speedy and can do immediate damage is really good, the nice thing about COPPERAJAH is that when it G-Maxes, look at this thing's base HP. It's 122. When that doubles, that is absolutely insane. Its coverage too is out of this world. Like, there's so many good moves that COPPERAJAH learns, which you think it wouldn't learn, like Outrage, Play Rough, Power Whip. It gets superpowers, Zen Headbutt, Heat Crash. Like, there's such good offensive options for COPPERAJAH, and a big thing about it too is that its G-Max move gives us Steel Spikes, which is not that amazing, but if I want to try and hazard sack my opponents, then that in itself is going to be really good because Stealth Rocks plus Steel Spikes is still extra damage that my opponent's team is going to be taking whenever they switch in and out. And then if I get a Spikes user later as well, that's even more hazard options that I get. This also gives me my Steel type and my Stealth Rocker, and in my opinion, a very, very amazing G-Max Mon. This gave me no points, but it also didn't cost me 40 points like Gengar would have cost me 40 points. Not gonna lie, part of me still kind of wishes I went G-Max Gengar over G-Max Kappa, but that's not really that big of an issue, I suppose. So moving on to our next team member here, I had my eye on a few tier 2 Mons, and because this is my next wheel, I figured that, well, I can basically kind of get anything that I really want to get. And for my next option, I decided to get STARMIE. Now, the cool thing about STARMIE in this current version of drafting is that it gets access to Flip Turn. Now, yes, I do have Mew as a Psychic type, but STARMIE is obviously more offensive, and it's not really going to be a bulky Psychic type all the time, unless I do want it to be bulky, like 60 HP, 85 Fizz Def. It's not the worst thing ever. And Flip Turn is really cool because it gives me momentum. And another nice thing about it too is that if my opponent switches out, I guess I get the analytic boost, even though, I mean, it's not doing that much more damage. Still, any extra damage is good damage nonetheless. So yeah, really excited to have STARMIE here. I never drafted STARMIE before, and to be honest, I've never really struggled against it, but with it having access to flip turn as well as teleport, I suppose, it sounded like a pretty cool mon, pretty fun mon to try out in this GDL season. We get Thunderwave as well, which is really good. We all know that paralysis is broken. Trick, if I really want to go down that route, gives me momentum, gives me another really solid hazard control mon along with CINDERACE as well. Our next pick here was something that I was really debating. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to get this or not, but the way I was planning out my draft, I was trying to decide, do I want to get another tier 1 or do I just want to get a bunch of tier 2s? Now, if you guys have seen my draft analysis videos before, you will know I hate tier 2. I hate tier 2 just about as much as I hate tier 5, because whenever I try to get something in tier 2, it's always just bad mons left over. But because this is my wheel, I was like, well, there's still some pretty good options, and there should still be good options on the way back regardless. So I ultimately decided to get a third tier 2. With the way my draft is going, one of the tier 1 mons really wouldn't have benefited me too much. So this route, I can get 2 tier 5s and be perfectly fine and still have a really good kind of top heavy draft. So I decided to go ahead and get MAMOSWINE. Now, MAMOSWINE is such a phenomenal Pokemon because it does so much ridiculous damage. Prepping for MAMOSWINE in itself is an absolute nightmare. If my opponents don't have Corviknight, SCARMIE, or I guess Gmax Corviknight, then MAMOSWINE most likely will be coming, clicking its dual stab and just absolutely murdering things. This also gives me my third stealth rocker, I guess, but again, I don't want Mew to have the stealth rocks. But rocks on MAMOSWINE is still really good just because it forces so many switch outs. It has really good priority in Ice Shard, decent coverage, solid speed, and its bulk is actually not that bad if invested into it. I've only used MAMOSWINE twice before, so this was definitely something I really wanted to try out once again. This allows me to handle electric types, which is really good for STARMIE. I can get rid of ice types for STARMIE as well. This also breaks through steel types alongside CINDERACE to be able to help Mew break and potentially sweep. Also, STARMIE is called 1010 for obvious reasons, and then MAMOSWINE is called Tauntaun. So moving on to our next pick here, I was really stuck on what dragon type I exactly wanted. I was really hoping to get Druddigon. I wanted to get Druddigon so badly. Unfortunately though, it got picked earlier in the round, or I think the round that I got MAMOSWINE, and I was so devastated by that because there's not really any other dragon that I want. But I figured that GOODRA is kind of cool. Somebody had mentioned GOODRA to me, and GOODRA's the mon I've never used before. Again, it's kind of like STARMIE. I've never really seen it do anything, but its coverage is absolutely insane. It's a really good special defensive mon, which does help me out against those setup electric types potentially that MAMOSWINE doesn't want to deal with, like Rotom Heat, so that's a huge plus. The only downside is that it doesn't get Dragon Dance. Like, so many new mons got Dragon Dance. Like, if this thing got Dragon Dance, I definitely think it would have been a lot better. But typically GOODRA is tier 2, here it was tier 3, and I figured, hey, why not? Its abilities are all really good. Could go like Rain Dance, Hydration with Rest. Zap Zipper is good to deal with grass types for STARMIE. Gooey is really good to lower speed and stuff, and overall its stats are pretty solid. Obviously its Fizz Def could be a little bit better, but that's not really that big of an issue. So yeah, GOODRA, pretty cool mon, tier 3. Hey, it fits what I needed to do. So moving on to our next pick here. Since this was my next wheel pick, I could get GOODRA on something else. And I figured that with a lot of teams not having grounded poison types, because the main ground poison that I wanted to get, which was Skuntank, also got sniped. So yeah, Druddigon and Skuntank got sniped, and honestly the Skuntank snipe hurt more than anything because I was so set on getting Skuntank for tier 5. It was just so much value for one mon, and when it got sniped, oh, as upsetting as Druddigon being picked, Skuntank probably hurt a lot worse. So I knew that I needed to get a grounded poison type, and there was a very cool grounded poison type in tier 2, which is Shino, aka Scolipede. So the great thing about Scolipede is the fact that it can now get access to heavy duty boots, which means it does not care about stealth rocks or spikes or anything like that, which means it most likely will have a much easier time being able to be a setup sweeper. Speed boost alone as an ability is really good. Now it does get access to baton pass, but we are doing dry pass this season. But yeah, Scolipede, very speedy mon. Gets access to Swords Dance. Boots means that I can invest into my bulk. I can have an easier time setting up, and it also gives me access to a spikes user. Again, Mew did get access to spikes and T-spikes, but I don't want Mew to have to do that, and now that I have it with Scolipede along with steel spikes from GMAX COPPERAJAH, this is absolutely insane. Plus its coverage is also really solid. Like at +2, this thing is going to be doing damage regardless. Yeah, Scolipede, very awesome on. It's been a while since I've used Scolipede, so I'm really excited to have it on the draft here. So moving on to our next mon here, I realized that I needed a fairy type, I still needed a dark type, and I need to have something that is not weak to ground moves. Look at my draft. Ground moves absolutely murder me. So at this point, I think I pretty much had everything outside of my tier 4, my 2 tier 5s, and my tier 3, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but yeah. So initially, I had my eyes set on Zoroark and Clefairy. Those were the two mons that I ultimately ended up getting before I made pre-week 1 trades. So this next pick I think was going to be Zoroark, just because it was a dark type. Illusion seemed pretty cool. It gave me momentum, it gave me a knockoff user, which in itself is pretty awesome as well. But I ended up dropping that and Clefairy, and I ended up getting my next pick, but not really my next pick, which is Comfey. I'm just going off the GFX at this point. So yeah, this should be level 50, sorry. But we got Comfey because it ended up getting dropped by somebody else. So I was like, hey, Comfey is more than likely a much better fairy than Clefairy, because Clefairy is forced to have a Violite. Like, yeah, Teleport, Stealth Rocks, Healing Wish are pretty cool, but Comfey does give me access to momentum still with U-turn. It gets me access to Defog, another Pokemon with really good priority because of its ability Triage. I always forget how you pronounce that, because of Draining Kiss and Giga Drain having priority. Even Synthesis having priority is really nice as well. Elite Seed on this is also not that bad whatsoever, because that's definitely something that my opponents need to take into consideration. It got access to Stored Power now, which I'm pretty sure is a Gen 8 move, and it didn't have it back in Gen 7, which means I can deal with psychic types even better, which is really good. Obviously losing hidden power is a little bit unfortunate because I can't run something like hidden power fire or hidden power ground for steel types, but that's not really that big of an issue, because if you look at our draft, I have CINDERACE and I have MAMOSWINE. Those two mons alone absolutely murder steel types. COPPERAJAH gets access to Heat Crash and then G-Max Heat Crash, which is pretty good. Mew gets access to Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Earthquake, Earth Power, and all of that. GOODRA gets access to fire moves. STARMIE can potentially burn steel types with Scald or just pressure them, which is really amazing. And then Scolipede also gets access to Earthquake as well, and at +2, Earthquake is going to be damaging any type of steel type as well. So I figured that the hidden power loss really isn't that big of an issue. No Healing Wish, it does suck, but that's a little sacrifice, I think, for all the added stuff that Sakura, aka Comfey here, adds to us, and hopefully it won't be useless like Sakura was in the anime. So moving on to our next mon here. Again, I need to get Pokemon that deal with ground types. I don't have a ground resist or immunity, and unfortunately at this point I'm stuck picking things out of tier 4 and tier 5. I already kind of had my eye set on a tier 5, and again, this is my wheel, I'm pretty sure. My next pick here is going to be my next tier 4. I'm 90% sure this was tier 4, right? Hold on. Yeah, tier 4, and that is going to be Tamari, aka ROTOM-FAN. I did kind of have my eye on ROTOM-FAN a little bit earlier in the draft, because the great thing about it is that this is a very, very solid ground immunity, even though yes, it is weak to Stone Edge, so Edgequake coverage can still kind of smack it, but still, I can more or less play around that, but just having the ground immunity is really nice. Obviously its ability is basically useless, but that's not the biggest issue ever. This also gives me another pretty solid hazard removal. It gives me momentum with Volt Switch. Nasty plot on this is absolutely disgusting as well. It has pretty good bulk. Its coverage could be better. Like, its coverage really isn't that good. It's dual stab, dark pulse, and like shadow ball basically, because no hidden powers, but that's really not the biggest issue ever. Rotom is just mainly here so I can ensure I can deal with those mons with annoying ground coverage. It's also really nice to have something for bulky water types, because as you can see, I don't have a grass type yet and I have no electric type until now. So yeah, bulky waters were a really big issue, but now we can kind of mitigate that, which is a big plus. So moving on to my final wheel here, I needed something from tier 5. At this point I can get whatever tier 5s I want, essentially, because these are my last 2 picks, and I decided to go with Trevenant. The main reason I wanted to get Trevenant is because from the instant that I got COPPERAJAH, I was like, I want something with Trick Room. I really want something with Trick Room, because in my opinion, with Trick Room support, Gmax COPPERAJAH is even more terrifying to deal with. Now yes, Mew and STARMIE do learn Trick Room. I think Comfey also learns Trick Room, but let's be honest, you don't typically want to run Trick Room on either of those 3. And the nice thing about Trevenant is that with base 56 speed and now access to Poltergeist, however you want to pronounce it, this gives me a pretty solid Trick Room mon. It gives me a grass type, which I desperately needed, so it gives me a ground resist. Now, even though it doesn't get access to Synthesis, which is a little bit bad, like I wanted to try and fit Gourgeist, but all the options really weren't better than me replacing ROTOM-FAN, because I mean Trevenant is still decently bulky, like 85 HP, 76 Fizz Def is pretty decent in my opinion. So I can still run Rest with Natural Cure, which is not the best thing ever, but also really not the worst option either. I guess Harvest plus a berry is pretty cool. It gets access to Frisk, which you guys already know. I love Frisk. Frisk is like my absolute favorite ability ever. Its coverage is also really not that bad. It gives me a ghost typing as well to potentially help against fighting types, which I guess I don't really need, but Poltergeist is cool. It has decent offensive stats, solid Trick Roomer in my opinion that can really help out COPPERAJAH. So this is definitely something that my opponents are going to need to take into consideration. Do they have to face COPPERAJAH in Trick Room and outside of Trick Room, or just outside of Trick Room, or just inside of Trick Room essentially? So yeah, pretty excited for this, hoping that this can put in a lot of work. And moving on to our final pick, as you can see, I don't have a dark type. I've always said this in every single one of my draft analysis. You need to always need to 110% need to have a dark type, and that is going to be VULLABY. Now obviously VULLABY is not the most ideal dark type to have, but it's still pretty good. Like, I've seen VULLABY used amazingly in the hands of good players. Not saying that I'm good, but I'm hoping I can use this to some type of advantage. And even though, yes, I guess I will have to hold a Violite as opposed to heavy duty boots like Mandibuzz, that's not really that big of an issue because its bulk is pretty solid. It gets access to Roost. Foul Play is pretty nice, gets Knockoff. Obviously Knockoff plus Poltergeist is not the best combo, but that's not really that big of an issue. But looking at matchups, VULLABY could definitely be coming to a few games just because of what it adds to my team. It gives me another ground immunity, which is really good. Momentum with U-turn. Tailwind is also pretty nice. Nasty Plot could be something I may want to try out as well. Toxic obviously is always good. Defog for removal is also a really nice option. And just, yeah, so I ended up dropping Clefairy plus Zoroark for Comfey and VULLABY, and this is the final outcome of our draft for Season 2 of the Galar Defenders League. Let me know what you guys think about our draft down below. Make sure to powerball that thumbs up button as well. And with that being said, I will see you with our week 1 upload match next week on the 20th. So thank you all for watching, and I will see y'all very soon. Later, everybody.
My brain and heart are both tied in the knot, and this hinders me from crying a lot. This causing me to show no emotion. But when I said I cared, I wasn't joking. But I guess it's too late for me to become broken. For now, I'm living with no more pain, tears, or hoping. I'm just coasting. Yeah, I said I'm coasting. No more pain, tears, and hoping. For real.